Fiancée's mom crashes ceremony. Accuses me of kidnapping grandchild. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. My fiancée's mother pointed at me from the back of the aisle and screamed, "He kidnapped my granddaughter." The violinist stopped so hard the last note squealed. Half the guests stood up. The other half just stared at me like they were waiting for me to lunge at somebody. Lily, 6 years old, and wearing the little flower crown she'd begged to match Nora's bouquet, burst into tears right there beside the front row. Nora went white. I remember the exact way her fingers loosened around mine, not because she believed her mother, but because for one awful second she didn't know what was real anymore. Diane came storming forward in a pale blue suit, like she was arriving to save us from a fire only she could see. "Don't let him leave with her," she yelled at the venue coordinator. "He took her from me. He's been isolating them for months." I wish I could say I answered with some perfect speech. I didn't. My mouth dried out. My ears rang. I looked at Lily, then at Nora, then at 80 people in folding chairs watching my life get skinned alive in public. "Diane," I said, keeping my voice low because Lily was already shaking, "what are you doing?" "What I should have done sooner," she snapped. "Protecting my family." That word, my, hit harder than the accusation. My family. My granddaughter. My daughter. As if Nora was still 12. As if Lily was a doll she'd loaned out. As if I was some stranger who had slipped in through a window and stolen a life that never belonged to me. Marcus moved from the second row before anybody else did. He came up beside me, not touching me, just there. Solid. "Everybody needs to calm down," he said. "Nobody kidnapped anyone." Diane whipped toward him. "You stay out of this." But the damage was already done. I saw a guest reach for their phone. I saw Nora's aunt pulling Lily close while Lily cried, "I want mommy." I saw the venue manager whispering to someone at the door, probably security, maybe police. And standing under that flower arch, in a suit I'd saved up months to buy, I realized Diane hadn't just come to ruin our wedding. She had come with a story she'd been building for months. A year and a half before Diane accused me of kidnapping her grandchild, I met Nora because Lily spilled apple juice on my shoes. It was at a Saturday community market near Nora's apartment. I was holding 2 coffees and trying to answer a work text when a tiny body slammed into my knee. 1 cup flew, 1 survived, and this little girl in sparkly rain boots looked up at me like I was the one who had messed up. I said sorry in my head, she told me. Nora looked mortified. "Lily, no? You say it out loud." I laughed because I couldn't help it. The head version counts for partial credit. That was my first glimpse of them. Nora embarrassed, exhausted, beautiful in a quiet way. Lily fearless and literal. I was working maintenance for the city then, long shifts, early mornings, the kind of job people don't notice unless something breaks. Nora taught dental assisting classes at a vocational school and was raising Lily mostly on routine, overtime, and stubbornness. We started with coffee, then park days, then grocery runs that turned into dinners because Lily was tired and Nora looked even more tired. I never tried to play dad. I tied shoes, fixed a wobbly cabinet door, learned which cartoon voice meant Lily was okay and which one meant she was getting sick. I showed up. That mattered to Nora because not many people had. Lily's biological father had drifted in and out so completely, he was more story than person. Diane filled that vacuum like she was born to occupy it. She watched Lily 3 afternoons a week, had a key to Nora's apartment, and opinions on everything from cough syrup to curtains. At first I thought it was helpful. Generous, even. Nora used words like close-knit. She said, "My mom can be intense, but she loves hard." The first time Lily reached for my hand without thinking, we were crossing a parking lot after ice cream. Nora noticed it before I did. She smiled in this soft, startled way, like something inside her had unclenched. I didn't say anything. I just held on and kept walking. By the time I proposed, it didn't feel like I was stepping into their life. It felt like we had already built one together. Then Diane looked at my ring box and reacted like I'd pulled a weapon. Diane's first problem with me wasn't that I was bad with Lily. It was that I was good. I didn't understand that right away. At first her disapproval came wrapped in manners. She'd smile while criticizing. Offer help that was really correction. "You're sweet to try," she'd tell me when I packed Lily's snack bag, then repack it 2 minutes later like I'd filled it with nails. If I read Lily a bedtime story, Diane would drift into the room and say, Grandma does the voices better, remember? Lily usually looked confused, like she hadn't realized there was supposed to be a competition. The moment it clicked for me happened 3 months after Nora and I moved in together. We had Lily that weekend, and I took her to a children's museum because Nora was finishing grades. Lily came back with face paint, a balloon sword, and a plastic astronaut helmet she refused to remove. She spent the whole afternoon calling me Commander Caleb. It was ridiculous and perfect. Around 6, Diane let herself into the apartment without knocking, which she did more often than I liked. She stopped in the kitchen doorway and took in the scene. Lily on the counter eating grapes, me making grilled cheese, Nora laughing by the sink. Something in Diane's face tightened. "Well," she said, "looks like I'm not needed anymore." Nora immediately went into smoothing mode. "Mom, that's not what." But Diane was already focused on Lily. "Come here, my baby." Lily didn't move right away. She was mid-story about moon rocks and wanted to finish. Diane's smile stayed in place, but it got colder around the edges. I said, "Come here." Lily slid off the stool slowly and went to her. Diane hugged her too hard, eyes fixed on me over Lily's shoulder. "You know," she said lightly, "kids get attached fast. It doesn't mean they understand who's permanent." The room went still. Nora laughed a little, fake and brittle. "Mom." "What?" "I'm just being honest." I wanted to push back, but Lily was between us, helmet crooked, little hands fisted in Diane's jacket. So I kept my voice even and said, "Nobody's replacing anyone." Diane smiled at me like she'd already filed that sentence away for later. I should have noticed then that she wasn't warning me. She was marking the territory she planned to defend. The red flags before the wedding never looked dramatic in the moment. That's what made them so easy to excuse. A month after Nora and I set the date, Diane started asking questions in this falsely casual tone. "Who'll watch Lily on the honeymoon? Are you sure marriage won't confuse her? Did Caleb ask what's best for Lily, or only what he wants?" She always phrased it like concern. She always waited until Nora was tired. Then the logistics started getting weird. Lily's dance teacher texted Nora one Thursday, asking why Grandma said pickup had changed. Nora stared at the message and frowned. "Mom never told me she talked to Ms. Alvarez." Diane brushed it off when confronted. "I was helping. God, everything doesn't have to be a crisis." A week later, Lily mentioned Grandma had asked whether she liked staying at Grandma's house better than Caleb's apartment. Lily corrected her right away. "It's our apartment," and Diane apparently got quiet after that. When Nora told me, she rubbed her forehead and said, "She's just insecure." Then there were the missed calls. Diane would ring Nora 3 or 4 times in a row during our dinner, then say it was about nothing. She'd forward random articles about predatory step-parents or children needing continuity. She started insisting on more solo time with Lily right before the wedding, saying, "Once you're married, everything changes." The strangest moment came at a Sunday brunch with a few relatives. Diane lifted her mimosa, smiled at me, and said, "I just hope no one tries to move too quickly into a role they haven't earned." Her sister actually looked embarrassed. I said, "What role would that be?" Diane dabbed her mouth with a napkin. "Family isn't a costume, Caleb." Nora kicked my ankle under the table, a silent plea not to take the bait. Later in the car, she said, "Please don't make me choose sides over every comment." I remember gripping the steering wheel too hard. "I'm not asking you to choose sides. I'm asking why your mom keeps talking like I'm dangerous." She doesn't mean it like that. Maybe Nora believed that then. Maybe she had to. 2 nights later, I found my name crossed off Lily's school form. The sick part is that if you only looked at the sweetest moments, you'd understand exactly why Diane panicked. Lily and I built a rhythm so ordinary it probably looked threatening to someone who mistook control for love. I knew she hated strawberries and yogurt, but loved actual strawberries if you cut the tops off and called them rocket fruit. I knew the stuffed rabbit she slept with had one ear she rubbed when she was tired. I knew that if a thunderstorm hit after bedtime, the only way to keep her in her room was to sit on the floor and tell her boring stories about plumbing maintenance until she fell asleep out of protest. One Tuesday, Nora got home late after a parent advisory meeting and found Lily and me at the kitchen table doing what Lily called restaurant homework. I had made grilled chicken wraps, but Lily had turned the whole thing into a pretend cafe where she took my order on a sticky note and charged me 3 buttons. Nora stood in the doorway smiling like she couldn't decide whether to cry or laugh. "This is so domestic it's almost suspicious," she said. Lily pointed at me with her crayon. "Caleb doesn't burn the tortillas anymore." "That's growth," I said. Nora came over and kissed my cheek, then Lily's head. It was tiny, nothing dramatic. But that was the life we were building. Errands, jokes, brushed teeth, school pickup, medicine at the right dose, socks paired in a dryer basket. Love that looked like consistency. Diane never mocked those moments directly. She did something worse. She reframed them. If I helped with bath time once because Nora had a migraine, Diane would later ask why I was insisting on private routines. If I took Lily to the pediatrician with Nora because she needed backup, Diane would call it playing father in front of doctors. When Lily drew a picture of the three of us under one roof, Diane sighed and said, "Children are so impressionable." The last normal evening before everything turned, Lily climbed into my lap during movie night and asked, "When you marry Mommy, do I get to keep you forever?" I looked at Nora first. Her eyes filled instantly. I told Lily, "You never had to earn me, kiddo. I'm already here." We didn't know Diane was standing in the hallway, listening to every word. After that, Diane stopped pretending her problem was timing. Her problem was me. She showed up unannounced more often, with an excuse. Extra groceries. A forgotten sweater. A toy Lily had accidentally left behind weeks earlier. She'd walk in, survey the apartment like an inspector, then latch onto whatever gave her leverage. If Lily had fingerprints on the coffee table, Diane would sigh and say, "Some households are still learning structure." If Nora looked tired, Diane would ask whether marriage stress was already taking a toll. The worst was how she cornered Nora when I wasn't there. I know that now because Marcus started noticing the after effects before I did. He came by one evening to help me move a bookshelf and found Nora sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing while Lily colored beside her. "You good?" he asked. Nora gave this delayed smile that convinced nobody. "Yeah, had a long talk with my mom." Marcus glanced at me once and changed the subject, but later in the parking lot he said, "Man, she looks like she got audited." That was it. Diane didn't argue with Nora. She interrogated her. Had I ever raised my voice? Did I really need to pick Lily up from school? Why was I the one Lily asked for at night now? Did Nora think it was healthy to let a man insert himself so deeply this fast? When Nora repeated some of it to me, it always came softened. She's worried about change. She's scared of losing time with Lily. One Friday, Diane came over while I was assembling wedding favors. Nora was folding place cards. Lily was asleep. Diane set down a bag of ribbon and looked at Nora. "I just hope you understand," she said, "that once you marry him, you won't be able to undo how attached Lily becomes." Nora went still. "Mom, stop." "No, listen to me. Men leave. Men disappoint. Then the child pays." I said, carefully, "That sounds like a conversation you need to have with your own past, not with us." Diane's head snapped toward me. "And that right there is what worries me. You think because you're calm, you're safe." Nora stood up, her chair scraped. "You need to go." At the door, Diane turned back and said, "One day you'll wish you listened to me." A week later, Lily's teacher asked why Grandma wanted copies of release forms. That was the point where my unease stopped being vague. Lily's teacher, Ms. Green, didn't sound accusatory. She sounded confused. She called Nora on speaker while I was driving us home from work, and after the usual greeting she said, "I just wanted to confirm whether Lily's pickup permissions are changing. Her grandmother asked twice this week for the latest copy." Nora frowned. "No, why would they be?" A pause. She said there was a transition happening. I glanced at Nora. She was already staring back at me. When Nora called Diane that night, Diane laughed. Actually laughed. I was trying to be proactive. Since Caleb's so involved now, I thought it would be smart to understand the paperwork. That answer should have settled nothing, but Nora let it. I didn't. Not fully. So I started paying closer attention. It didn't take long to find cracks. Diane had told Nora she only stopped by the school once. Ms. Green said twice. Diane told Lily not to mention that Grandma had picked her up that one quick time, the previous Wednesday, because Mommy would get stressed. Except I had the family calendar open on my phone and knew Diane hadn't picked Lily up Wednesday. I had. I even had the time-stamped photo Lily took of my left ear by accident in the car at 3:42 p.m. Then Marcus sent me a screenshot from a neighborhood Facebook post Diane had commented on under some article about blended families. Her comment read, "Some men target single mothers by making the child dependent first. Watch the pattern, not the charm. She hadn't tagged anyone. She didn't need to. What the hell is this? Marcus texted. I stared at the screen until my jaw hurt. The date on the comment was 3 weeks before our wedding. 3 weeks before the ceremony, she later claimed had blindsided her. That same night, Diane texted the family group chat. I just pray Lily's stability remains the priority during all these sudden changes. I showed Nora both screenshots. She looked sick, but then did what she always did with her mother. She tried to explain instead of conclude. She's spiraling, she whispered. Maybe, but spiraling people don't usually build narratives this carefully. The next morning, I found out Diane had been saving my voicemails. I almost missed the warning because it came wrapped in everyday gossip. Marcus and I were loading folding chairs into his truck after a pre-wedding barbecue at my aunt's place when he said, "You know, Diane asked me if you've ever had a temper, right?" I thought he was kidding. What? He shrugged, but his face was tight. Couple weeks ago, casual as hell. Asked if you'd ever punched a wall, yelled at Lily, gotten controlling with Nora. I told her no, obviously. Then she asked whether you drink more when you're stressed. The blood left my hands so fast I nearly dropped the chair. Why didn't you tell me? Because I figured she was fishing for reassurance. Then today your aunt heard Diane telling one of Nora's cousins that wedding stress has been bringing out behavior in you. That phrase kept echoing. Bringing out behavior. Not a direct accusation. A setup. A suggestion. Something deniable. That night I sat in the apartment parking lot after work and replayed the last 2 months in order. The article links. The school forms. The group chat comments. The release paperwork. The questions to Marcus. The way Diane kept framing ordinary care as inappropriate access. Nora came downstairs because I'd been sitting too long. She tapped on my window. When I let her in, she looked cold and worried. You didn't come up. I'm thinking. She was quiet for a second. About my mom? I laughed once, no humor in it. Your mom is building a case file out of bedtime stories and school pickup. Nora flinched because she knew I wasn't exaggerating anymore. She thinks I'm taking Lily from her. I said. Not from you. From her. Nora stared through the windshield. When Lily was a baby, my mom basically moved in. I was barely sleeping. Her father was gone. Everybody kept telling me how lucky I was to have her. I never had the space to ask where help ended and ownership began. That was the first time Nora said something true without padding it. Then she added, but she wouldn't do anything extreme. I showed her the voicemail folder Diane had forwarded to herself from Lily's old iPad. And suddenly, I knew the wedding wasn't the beginning of Diane's plan. Once I accepted that Diane wasn't merely overstepping, I stopped relying on feelings and started collecting facts. Marcus helped because he's the kind of person who labels phone chargers and reads terms of service. He came over with takeout, opened his laptop, and said, "Okay, we build a timeline, not a rant." So we did. March 3rd, Diane comments online about predatory stepfathers. March 11th, Ms. Green reports Diane requesting pickup forms. March 14th, Diane asks Marcus if I have a temper. March 18th, family group chat message about Lily's stability. March 21st, Nora finds my name crossed off an old emergency contact printout in Diane's handwriting. March 24th, Diane forwards my voicemails off Lily's iPad to her own email. Seeing it laid out made the whole thing feel colder. Intentional. Nora contributed more than she realized. She dug through texts and found messages from Diane saying things like, "Be careful how much unsupervised access you give him," phrased just ambiguously enough to sound protective if forwarded. We pulled screenshots showing Diane asking for Lily overnight on dates she knew we had wedding appointments. We saved the school's digital release form listing both Nora and me as approved pickup contacts, last updated with Nora's signature and timestamp. MS. Green emailed confirmation that Diane had never been listed as a legal guardian, only an emergency backup. Then came the voicemail that changed everything. Marcus cleaned up the audio from a clip recorded when Diane didn't realize Lily's iPad was still filming during a coloring session at her house. You could hear Diane asking, "If Caleb ever took you somewhere and Mommy didn't know, would you tell Grandma?" Lily, confused, said, "Mommy always knows." Diane tried again, but if she didn't? I felt sick listening to it. Nora cried in the bathroom for 20 minutes after that. "We should confront her," she said when she came out. I looked at the evidence spread across the table. If we confront her without forcing accountability, She'll rewrite the whole thing before morning. Then Marcus checked the wedding venue security policy. Every entrance, hallway, and ceremony space was recorded with time-stamped video. When the ceremony exploded, I didn't know yet how much evidence we had behind us. I only knew that one accusation had the power to erase years of ordinary goodness in under 10 seconds. Diane marched halfway down the aisle, chest heaving, one hand clamped dramatically over her collarbone. "Ask him where Lily was last Thursday night," she shouted. "Ask him why he keeps taking her without telling family." Last Thursday night. I grabbed that detail instantly because it was specific, and specificity can save you when lies get theatrical. "Lily was with Nora and me at home," I said. "We ordered pizza and watched a movie." Diane turned to the guests instead of answering me. This is what manipulators do. They stay calm. They rehearse. A murmur moved through the rows. Somebody near the back actually whispered, "Oh my God." Nora stepped forward then, finally finding her voice. "Mom, stop. Lily has never been missing. She has been taken from me." Diane cried. "You can't even see it because he's isolated you." Lily started sobbing harder, reaching for Nora, not Diane. That mattered. I saw it register on a few faces. I also saw the venue manager, a woman named Teresa, holding a radio near the side door while two security staff hovered uncertainly. Marcus moved beside Nora and said sharply, "Diane, if you're alleging kidnapping, say when. Say where. Say what report you filed." Diane blinked. "Just once. But I caught it. She was kept from me," Diane said, adjusting. "Repeatedly. He controls access." That wasn't the same claim, and it weakened the room. You could feel it. Teresa stepped closer and asked, "Ma'am, are you saying a child is currently in danger?" Diane pointed at me again. He should not be near her. I wanted to scream. Instead, I forced myself to stay still because one angry motion was all she needed. "Teresa," I said, "please don't call this based on volume. Check the front desk binder. Nora and I signed Lily in with us today. She walked in with us. There is no kidnapping." Teresa looked uncertain. Then one of the security guys said, "We also have entry footage." For the first time, Diane's face didn't look righteous. It looked like she hadn't expected anyone else to bring receipts. The moment Diane realized the room might not carry her on pure panic, she shifted tactics. That's how I knew this wasn't spontaneous. Her voice dropped from shriek to tremble. She pressed a hand to her chest and said, "I'm a grandmother trying to protect a child, and everyone is attacking me for caring too much." If you hadn't watched her sharpen herself for months, you might have fallen for it. But then she made a mistake. Officer Ramirez had just arrived because Teresa, wisely, called for an on-site event officer instead of sending the whole thing into rumor territory. He asked simple questions, the kind built to test coherence more than emotion. "Ma'am, when exactly do you believe the child was abducted?" Diane swallowed. Not abducted in the legal sense. 5 seconds earlier she had yelled kidnapped. Ramirez didn't miss it. Neither did Nora. "You said kidnapped," Nora whispered, like she was hearing her mother's voice from outside her own body. Diane pivoted to Lily. "Sweetheart, tell them Grandma barely gets to see you now. Tell them Caleb keeps you away." Lily buried her face in Nora's dress. "I don't want Grandma to yell." That landed like a stone in water. The ripples touched everyone. Ramirez kept his tone neutral. "Who has legal custody of Lily?" "Nora," I said. "Nora and I are here together," Nora added, voice shaking but stronger now. "Caleb has never taken Lily anywhere without me knowing. Ever." Diane spun on her. "You are too blinded to see what he's doing." Something in Nora hardened then, not all at once, but enough for me to see it. "No," Nora said. "I'm starting to see what you're doing." Diane laughed, high and desperate. Of course he's turned you against me too." Marcus stepped in with his phone already open. "Actually, Diane, you did that yourself." He held up the screenshot of her asking him if I had a violent temper. Then the comment about predatory stepfathers. Then Ms. Green's email about release forms. Diane's eyes flicked from screen to screen, calculating. And then she said the sentence that finally blew the mask apart. I had to make them all listen somehow. Silence hit the room so hard it felt physical. Diane seemed to realize what she'd said a fraction too late. Her mouth parted, then closed. Nora just stared at her mother like she was looking at a stranger wearing familiar skin. Officer Ramirez was the first to speak. "Ma'am, what exactly did you mean by that?" Diane straightened, trying to recover dignity by force. I mean, no one was taking my concerns seriously. What concerns? I asked. That Lily loves me? That Nora was marrying me? That you weren't the center anymore? Don't you dare reduce this, Diane snapped. I raised that child with her. I was there when Nora couldn't stand, when Lily had fevers, when there was no one else. And now suddenly I'm supposed to ask permission? I'm supposed to schedule visits like some outsider while you play house? There it was. Not protection. Possession. Nora's face crumpled, but she didn't back down. She's my daughter. And I am the one who kept you both alive. Diane shouted. The truth started pouring out in that ugly way it does when somebody is held it under pressure too long. She admitted she'd been scared the wedding would formalize my place. She admitted she asked for school paperwork because she wanted to know how much access I had. She admitted she spoke to relatives because, in her words, people only pay attention when you frame danger clearly. Ramirez asked if she had any evidence of abuse, neglect, coercion, or an actual unlawful taking of the child. Diane's answer was devastating because of how empty it was. I know how these men operate. These men. Not me. Men. A category. A fear she addressed me in because it fit her story. Marcus then played the cleaned-up audio from the iPad. Diane asking Lily leading questions. Trying to coach fear into a 6-year-old. Gasps went through the chapel. Teresa, the venue manager, actually said, Jesus, under her breath. Diane lunged verbally after that, blaming stress, concern, and me for forcing her hand. But every word made it worse. Because by then the accusation had collapsed into its real shape. A grandmother so terrified of losing control that she tried to turn love into evidence. And Nora took one step back from her mother like it burned. Once the truth broke open, the practical fallout started faster than the emotional fallout. That's how real-life disasters work. Paperwork shows up before peace does. Officer Ramirez took statements in a side room, while Teresa quietly dismissed half the staff from the ceremony space. A few guests left out of discomfort. More stayed out of loyalty to Nora. My suit jacket was off, my tie loosened, and I was sitting at a folding table giving a police officer a timeline for why I had not kidnapped the child who had arrived with me, her mother, and a basket of flower petals. It would have been absurd if it hadn't been so dangerous. Diane kept trying to reframe what happened. First she said she misspoke. Then she said kidnapping was emotional shorthand. Then she claimed she feared imminent custodial interference, a phrase she obviously found online somewhere. But security footage, school records, Nora's statement, Marcus's screenshots, and that audio clip boxed her in from every side. Nora's relatives split immediately. One aunt cried and said Diane had always been intense, but well-meaning. Another muttered, "No, this is sick." Marcus nearly got into it with one of Diane's cousins who accused me of escalating things by making her feel replaced. That sentence alone told me how long Diane's version of events had been circulating. Lily was the cost I couldn't stop looking at. She sat in a private bridal room with Nora, hiccuping from earlier tears, asking if Grandma was mad because of her dress. Kids will always try to locate chaos inside themselves if adults aren't careful. That nearly broke me more than the public accusation did. Nora and I didn't restart the wedding. We couldn't. We told the guests there would be no ceremony that afternoon. Some hugged us. Some avoided my eyes, which hurt more than I expected. Once someone hears a word like kidnapped, even disproven, it leaves residue. By evening, Diane had left with one brother after refusing to apologize. Nora sat on the edge of our bed, still in her dress, and said, "I knew she was controlling. I didn't know she would burn my life down to stay in it." Then her phone lit up with a new message from Diane. It wasn't remorse. It was a warning about what she'd tell family next. The message from Diane read, "Since you've chosen him, don't expect me to protect you when this ends badly." No apology. No concern for Lily. Just punishment. That finally did what months of smaller cruelties hadn't. It cut through Nora's reflex to rescue her mother from consequences. She looked at the screen for a long time, then handed me the phone without speaking. Her face had gone strangely calm. The next week was awful in boring, adult ways. We spoke to an attorney about documentation and future harassment. Nora updated Lily's school with written instructions limiting pickup access. We changed the apartment locks because Diane still had a key and had once called that just practical. Nora sent one message to close relatives. The kidnapping accusation was false. There is evidence. Please do not discuss Caleb around Lily, and do not share our address or schedule with my mother. Then came the hardest boundary of all. No unsupervised contact, Nora said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table after Lily went to sleep. I nodded, but I could tell she wasn't finished. No contact for now, she corrected, voice shaking. Not until she admits what she did and agrees to stop using Lily to control me. It sounded simple. It wasn't. Going low contact with a manipulative parent feels less like strength at first and more like stepping off a cliff while they shout that you push them. Diane did exactly that. She left voicemails crying about abandonment, sent long texts about sacrifice, told one relative I had forced Nora into cutting off her own mother. But the story didn't hold the way it used to, because there were screenshots now, audio, witnesses, her own words in a chapel full of people. A week later, Nora put on the plain cream dress she'd bought as a backup for our rehearsal dinner and said, I don't want her to own this date too. So Marcus drove Lily to his sister's for a sleepover, and Nora and I went to the courthouse with 2 friends and an envelope full of paperwork. No flowers, no orchestra, just fluorescent lights and Nora gripping my hand so tightly it hurt in the best way. After we signed, she exhaled like she had been underwater for years, and I recognized Diane's coat before I saw her face. For 1/6 I thought she had followed us there to do it all again. But Diane didn't storm us this time. She stood at the end of the courthouse hallway with her purse clutched against her side, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Not harmless, just smaller. She opened her mouth when Nora saw her, and Nora raised a hand before a single word came out. No, Nora said. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Diane's eyes filled immediately, maybe from grief, maybe from the shock of a boundary that wouldn't bend for her tears. I just wanted to talk, she said. You wanted an audience, Nora replied. You had one. I stayed quiet because this wasn't my sentence to finish. Lily wasn't there. That mattered. No scene. No child as witness. Just a daughter finally refusing the role she'd been assigned. You told a room full of people he kidnapped my daughter, Nora said. You tried to make Lily afraid so you could stay necessary. That is not love. Diane started crying harder. I was scared of losing you. Nora's face twitched, pain passing through it cleanly. You were losing control. That's different. Then she took my hand and walked us past her mother without another word. We didn't magically heal after that. Lily had questions for weeks. Nora started therapy again, this time with enough honesty to say the word enmeshment out loud. I learned that staying calm in a crisis doesn't mean you're untouched by it. Sometimes it just means the shaking comes later, in the shower, or in the grocery store, or when somebody uses the word family like it's always safe.